This game is super awesome. If you played it when it came out and you were pretty young like I was, watch out, it's gonna get nostalgic. Welcome one and all to Vivi's Doodled World. I play games and also doodle from time to time. Today I'm going to talk about a Game Boy exclusive title, Advance Wars, developed by a little company called Intelligent Systems back in 2001. Now if the company name sounds familiar to you, that would be because of their other, much more successful franchise. The turn-based, tactical fantasy RPG series, Fire Emblem. Although I tried numerous times, I never could get into the Fire Emblem series. But the game was in good hands because Intelligent Systems has been making turn-based tactics since 1998. And although Fire Emblem has seen more mainstream success, that series started in 1990, while the very first Wars game released in 1998 for the Japanese Family Computer. In fact, Fire Emblem might have Advance Wars to thank for its eventual rise because prior to the release of Advance Wars in the West, none of the games from either series were released outside of Japan. Actually, in a strange twist of fate, there was a span of time when there was an English version but not a Japanese one. The North American game was released on September 10th, 2001. That's right, this war game was made available one day before the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Because of this, the Japanese version was delayed to 2004. Though this did not prevent the game from being successful as it went on to receive critical acclaim and is forever cemented as one of the best titles on the Game Boy Advance. It also sold well enough to make Nintendo consider bringing Fire Emblem to the West. But unlike Fire Emblem, which is still going strong to this day, Advance Wars has not seen a new game since 2008. The latest title being Advance Wars Days of Ruin for the Nintendo DS. Then, all of a sudden, it's coming back. And unfortunately, it's still having development issues. Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp was to come out on Switch back in 2021, but it was pushed to April 2022 and due to the war in Ukraine is delayed indefinitely. Now personally, I don't have high hopes for this series. Development of the reboot has been handed to WayForward, the company behind the modern Shantae games. And while I love the Shantae series and all the hip sway, the cartoon cleavage, the jiggle animations, this handoff feels more like Nintendo testing out the waters before going all in on a proper sequel. It's unfortunate that Advance Wars has been hampered repeatedly by harrowing world events that take human lives. You might then assume that this war game portrays the bloody nature of actual warfare, like Call of Duty or the Command & Conquer series. But this is Nintendo we're talking about, so it's less Saving Private Ryan and more like Tom and Jerry. With all that said, let's get into it. I'm gonna show you the campaign mode from start to finish, go through all the hidden levels while trying to rank as high as I can. I'll also tell you all about the game's mechanics, the various game modes, the multiplayer, how to get hidden characters, and show off a bug that lets you cheese the game. When we first start the game, we're greeted by Commander Nell. She's going to be our teacher through the tutorial. We are a new tactical advisor for the Orange Star Army, recruited to help repel the invading Blue Moon forces. Now we enter our name, and this is the only Advance Wars game where you do this. The player is actually spoken to and is relevant to the events of the story. It's supposed to make you feel important, but going from my personal experience, it doesn't work so well. Future games left all story interactions between in-game characters, and allegedly even the WayForward remake will do away with this. There are 3 modes to choose from at the start. Versus mode is free battle, and link mode is multiplayer. We'll discuss these later. What we're interested in is field training, a set of 14 tutorial missions explaining the mechanics of war and each unit. Each mission is like a complex game of chess. Each battle starts at day 1. You and your opponent take turns per day to move your armies on a grid and engage in combat. The first to wipe out all enemy units or capture the opposing nation's headquarters is victorious. Field training does a great job of explaining everything you need to know. Every element of battle is simple and thus easy to wrap your head around. I'll explain them as we go along. Let's start with Field Training 1. The nation of Orange Star has long been rivals with Blue Moon, and their commanding officer Olaf has been a bit of a dick lately. Thus, we, the player, has been brought in as a tactical advisor. This training mission teaches us about movement and attacking. Each unit can move once per day. You do this by navigating the cursor around with the D-pad and selecting with the A button. Let's select one of our infantry, which is conveniently colored red, not orange. Insert unfunny communism joke here. The area your unit can go to will be highlighted, and moving the cursor will trace an arrow to their destination, and once there, they can be ordered to wait. The unit will darken, indicating their move is up. If you played Fire Emblem or even perhaps Super Robot Wars, this is already familiar to you. If we move next to an enemy unit, the attack command will appear and a percentage number will pop up. In Final Fantasy Tactics, another turn-based combat game, attacking would show two numbers, the estimated damage and the accuracy shown in percentage. In Advance Wars, all attacks are a guaranteed hit, and these numbers indicate how much damage they'll deal. All units in Advance Wars has 10 hit points, and doing 55% damage will leave a unit with 5 HP. The extra 5% means we have a 50% chance of doing 6 HP damage instead. Engaging in combat will play a short battle animation of the units firing. It's very cartoony, from the chibi-style soldiers and tanks, the commanding officers emoting portraits, down to the lack of blood and gore. Foot soldiers just fly off the screen when they're eliminated, and in the overworld map, they explode into a cloud of smoke. It's very juvenile, very Nintendo. When a unit is damaged, a number is displayed on top of their sprite on the map. Also, if the enemy unit has a weapon that can fire at you, they will counterattack. Which leads us to the secondary use of a unit's HP. If you observe the battle animation, you'll notice that an undamaged unit actually has a set of 5 soldiers, and as they take damage, they lose individuals. This is because HP also determines a unit's firepower. Foot soldiers with 5 HP remaining will only deal 50% damage. This is the mechanic that rewards aggressive play. Taking damage is inevitable, but all things being equal, getting in a preemptive strike is very often to your advantage. We can open the menu by hovering over a darkened unit or an empty space and pressing A. This is how we end our turn, and now it's the blue army's turn to move. The events of this game took place before the idea of dressing for camouflage was invented. But with the start of the enemy's turn comes a change in music. Man, just listen to the fanfare and synthesized drumline. So you may have noticed, Advance Wars has fantastic music. Each commanding officer or CO in the game has their own leitmotif that fits their personality and playstyle, and it's really good. We have yet to hear the best the game has to offer. Also, you wouldn't be blamed for thinking Olaf was a villain. His musical theme feels big and imposing, sure, but just look at his character design. His thick beard and default scowl are all hallmarks of a villain. Using preemptive strikes, we finished the mission in just 3 turns. Afterwards, we're shown a rating based on our playstyle. There are 3 qualifiers represented by horizontal bars: speed, power, and technique. We'll get more into this later. We get a maximum score for all 3, which gives us an A rank. On training mission number 2, the enemy has deployed mechanized infantry, or mech units, represented by infantry carrying shoulder-mounted bazookas. Although they have the lowest movement range in the game, they have superior stats compared with regular infantry. To deal with them, we're going to use the terrain to our advantage. The detail on the map is not just for show. Terrain gives defensive cover during combat, indicated by a star rating. They range from 0 to 4 stars, and each star gives a 10% defense boost. Mountains have a 4-star cover rating, which means firing on an enemy from a mountain will reduce the counterattack by 40%. But getting onto mountains is a bit tougher. Along with movement range, every unit also has a movement type, and terrain has a movement cost for each type. For this example, infantry units have the infantry movement type. They have a movement range of 3 and can cross land widely unhampered, but mountains slow them down because it costs 2 infantry movement to move through them. So at most, infantry can move 1 land space and 1 through a mountain. Mech units have their own unique movement type, and they are the only ground unit that's unhampered by any terrain. So unlike infantry, they can move through 2 mountain spaces per turn. Mommy now teaches me how to save, but the enemy is almost dead, so I select my soldiers to finish them off, but nope. She wants me to open the menu to check out the save feature. Field training doesn't just hold your hand, it drags you through the mud. Helicopter commanding, that's what this is. As field training goes on, we're gradually given all the ins and outs of the game, from all the different unit types, transport units, artillery fire, air and sea battles, and finally, fog of war. Graduating from field training is actually required to unlock the main story, and if you're an old player like I am, it does tend to drag. So I'll only play a few notable missions, and then I'll show you something you can do to graduate early. On field training number 3, we're taught how to capture properties. Battle maps have various properties, from cities to military bases bases, and capturing them provides a number of tactical benefits. Only foot soldiers can initiate a capture. You do this by moving them onto the structure and selecting capture. A cute little animation will show them stomping on a building and a number dropping from 20 to 10. Each structure has 20 HP, and infantry deducts their current HP to reduce this number each turn. This means it takes at least 2 days to capture a property, and if they get hurt, it'll prolong the capturing process. If the infantry unit is destroyed or moves away, the capture count reverts to 20, so it's important to prioritize finishing a capture once you start doing so. Once the property's HP hits 0, it's yours. It takes on your army's color and it produces 1000 gold every start of your turn. This will be important later. Nell gives us a brain teaser. Which city is the better choice to capture? The gray neutral city or the blue one that belongs to the enemy? The right answer is, of course, the enemies. Not only are we cutting off their funds, we've also taken away their capability to repair units from this position. Bases and cities repair 2 HP to allied units on every turn. This makes it difficult to eliminate units camping in allied properties. Not only do they have 30% more defense from the cover provided by the base, they also recover 2 HP per turn. Advance Wars games revolve around fighting over properties for map control, advancing slowly, staying just out of range of enemy fire, then gaining an advantageous position by capturing key structures and generating more resources. Once we go through all these mechanics, it'll make sense why this game is so engaging. Each army also has a unique building on the map. This is their headquarters. This is like the king piece in chess. You capture the enemy's HQ and you win, which gives you a tactical choice. Do you want to clear a path and make a beeline for the enemy's HQ? Or overwhelm your opponents to rout their troops? Either choice is viable. I actually often find myself wiping out the enemy just when I arrive at their base. When a unit is damaged, you can leave them in an allied city or base and they'll recover 2 HP per turn. But understandably, this takes time. If you have 2 of the same units, you can join them to combine their HP, so you'll have 1 less unit. But remember, more HP means more firepower as well. But you can also use low HP troops as a meat shield. You can't pass through hostile units in this game. Even air units for some reason are blocked by ground units, so you can take advantage of tight spaces to funnel the enemy. And for these situations, indirect combat is necessary. There are special units in the game that can fire from long range. For example, the aptly named artillery unit has a range of 2 to 3 spaces. They're unique in that they can't attack units right next to them, and they can't move and fire on the same turn. They also cannot counterattack under any circumstance, even against other artillery. And since you can't move after attacking in this game, any indirect combat unit that attacks is staying put for that turn. The ideal strategy is to put direct attack units as meat shields within the enemy's range and place artillery units right behind them. Your front line will take damage, but artillery units are really strong against anything they can hit, and it's enough to tip the odds to your favor. Let's skip ahead. Field Training 10 is titled Dogfights. In the mission select screen, Nell says, "I wonder how fast you can clear this air and indirect combat unit section. I know what I'm doing, so I finish it in just 2 days." Nell is mighty impressed and tells us of getting an S rank. Up to now, we've been scoring rank A throughout training, but in other modes, there's an even higher rank. For the best of the best, for cunning ingenuity, for superior military tactics. I, as a teenager, rarely got this because this game is tough and has really tight score windows. But now I'm a grown-ass man. I have a total of 4 Wars titles under my belt. We shall see how I fare. Now we skip to the final training mission. This is actually the only mission required to graduate from field training, and this introduces a game-changing condition: Fog of War. Fog of War is a condition set at the start of the battle. It can't be enabled or disabled mid-war game. It renders the battlefield dark and scary to navigate. Each unit also has a vision range indicating how far they can see. The recon unit is aptly named. It has a vision range of 5, the highest in the game. You'll want to protect them during Fog of War to maintain an advantage. The terrain also has additional effects in Fog of War. Infantry can climb onto mountaintops to increase their vision from 2 to 5. And woodlands normally provide good cover for ground units, but are difficult to traverse. In Fog of War though, they are hiding spots. You have to be right next to one to see what lies in it. Reefs provide the same benefit for naval units. And if you bump into an enemy unit while moving, you will stop on the spot, unable to undo your move or fire at the enemy. This is called an ambush. It makes moving into the unknown risky. As we're advancing towards the enemy HQ, we're struck by artillery from somewhere. This is the true danger of Fog of War. There's always a looming threat of indirect fire and you won't know where it's coming from. Do you avoid the area or risk losses while searching blind spots? We'll also see why it's particularly difficult for human players later. With the final training mission done, Nell bids us farewell and we're introduced to the first Orange Star commanding officer, Andy. We're also given a rank, Grey Rat. It increases as we play the game, but this is just fluff. I actually forgot this was even in the game. And that was just field training. It was very hemmed in and took a while to finish, but through my first time around it was still fun as hell. And we're just getting started. From here, the game opens up. Multiple new options unlocked from the main menu. There's War Room, Campaign, Battle Maps, and the one mode everyone tried out right away, Design Maps. Yes, you can orchestrate your own battles, create intricate map layouts, experiment with the units, maybe even challenge yourself in a lopsided fight. There are a few limitations. For one, you can't change the size of the map. It's fixed to a 30 by 20 area. There's also no undo option, and your map can only have up to 60 properties. Besides those, you are given all the tools you need to terraform the land and deploy armies as you see fit. Your creativity is the ceiling. Design away, give it a name, and save it. You can use your designed map in versus mode or link mode. And indeed, the most enjoyable way to use these maps is with or against your friends in multiplayer. But it's not yet time for that. Let's dive into campaign first and finish talking about the game's mechanics. First campaign mission. Wait, I thought you weren't going to bother us anymore, Nell. So she continues to give us advice despite already having Andy with us. Actually, that might be the reason because as we find out later, Andy's an idiot that should be disqualified from his position as commanding officer. The battle map is now bigger. We scroll by moving the cursor to the edge of the screen, and pressing start brings up a condensed map. We're also now able to make use of CO powers. These are special abilities you can activate once you fill your CO meter. The meter fills up as your units take damage. Think of it as a comeback mechanic. Each commander has different powers. Andy's active power is called Hyper Repair. It restores 2 HP to all his units immediately and for free. Of course, units can't have more than 10 HP, so timing is everything. Our opponent Olaf has the active power Blizzard. He can somehow control the weather, making it snow for one whole day. This brings us nicely to weather effects. There are 3 in total. Clear weather is the default, and the whole cast can navigate optimally. Snow, however, slows everything down quite a bit. It makes roads the only viable path for ground units. The woods and plains really slow you down. Even air and naval units have their movement ranges cut by half. The third weather condition is rain. It doesn't slow units as much, but it has an added effect of reducing vision by 1 in Fog of War. Olaf is immune to the negative effects of snow, giving him a huge terrain advantage whenever he uses his active power. The snow immunity is his passive effect, which nearly all COs have. Andy is the all-rounder and so doesn't have any strengths or weaknesses. Olaf is optimal in snow but is severely hampered by rain. These passive powers are yet another element that will influence the tactics you employ during battle. Also, fun fact, it's easy to guess Olaf's weather-specific ability if you know of his original design. He's straight up dressed as Santa Claus. The first campaign mission is just a warm-up. Unfortunately, I didn't pull my forces to the north and I ended up only with an A rank. Like I said, achieving S rank is hard. So let's talk about the scoring system. Speed is how fast you clear the map. This translates to the days of battle. It's the easiest to understand, but the maximum scores for it are really strict. If you play even slightly less than optimal, you're likely to take a hit in your speed score. Power indicates your level of aggression, but unless you understand how it works, you'll likely score low on this in bigger battles. You maximize your power score by destroying at least 10% of the enemy's total forces in a single day. This means instead of picking off units one by one, you're better off spreading the damage around, and then eliminating groups in a single turn. Finally, there's technique, determined by how little you lost during battle. To get maximum score, you need to keep unit losses to below 10% of your total. By far the easiest to manage. Joining troops doesn't count as losing them, and you can inflate your total numbers by producing a lot of infantry near the end of a battle. Second mission time, we're introduced to a new foe, second in command of Blue Moon's forces, Grit. He is a laid-back cowboy, and a damn good one at that. The best marksman Olaf has ever seen. Let's take a pause to listen to his music. He's the first CO we faced that has a passive firepower boost to specific units, and he's perhaps the most terrifying, because his long-range units hit one space further than normal. And if that's not enough, his active power snipe attack adds 2 more for 1 turn. So even the strategy of staying just out of reach from indirect fire is risky. When he activates his power, you are in for a beatdown. This is also the first mission we're given a base for new unit deployment. All properties you own produce 1,000 gold at the start of your turn. These funds are used during repair, but their main use is unit production. A ground base can produce ground units, an airport can produce air units, and seaports produce naval units. Let's take a look at all of them now. We have 10 different ground units. Infantry and mech are foot soldiers, the only unit type they can capture, and their cheap production price makes them a good candidate for meat shields. Recons are only effective against infantry, but their high movement range makes them useful in picking capturers off. You also have a basic tank and a stronger medium tank for general ground-to-ground combat. Anti-air Vulcans that tear air units to pieces and are particularly deadly against infantry. For indirect combat, we have cheaper mid-range artillery units, rockets for extreme long-range covering fire, and surface-to-air missile trucks, the most difficult unit to use in the game. But if you can keep them healthy, they can wipe out any air unit within firing range with just 1 hit. Finally, we have Armored Personnel Carriers, or APCs. These can transport infantry through long distances, and restores fuel and ammunition to allies. All units use fuel as they move, and some units, like tanks, have limited ammunition for their primary weapon. Units that run out of fuel can no longer move, and tanks that run out of cannon ammo will resort to their secondary machine guns. For air units, we have transport copters for quickly carrying foot soldiers over mountains and bodies of water. Battle copters are cheap and versatile air units. They're really useful for general aerial and ground combat. Fighter jets have the highest movement range in the game and are purely for air-to-air dogfights. And bombers drop a hellfire of damage. They're by far the biggest threat against ground and naval units. In this game, air units can stay afloat for days on end, but they run out of fuel quickly, and if they go empty, they crash and explode. So it's good to have an APC supporting them. Finally, there are 4 naval units. Submarines are sea combat units that can dive underwater, effectively hiding them as if fog of war is active. Cruisers are effective against submarines and air units. Landers can transport up to 2 ground units from island to island. And battleships, the most expensive unit in the game, boasts a range of 6 spaces, the longest range for an indirect combat unit. Also, for any transport unit, when they're shot down, any unit they're carrying is also lost. So you do well to protect your landers that are carrying medium tanks. And those were the mechanics, all of them, from movement, terrain cover, movement costs, base capture, unit production, resource generation, fuel and ammunition expenditure, direct and indirect combat, repair, transport, fog of war, and hiding spots. They all apply equally to everyone in the field of battle. Whatever constraints you are under, the AI is beholden to it as well. Much like chess, it's a symmetrical turn-based game. In comparison, Fire Emblem has a lot more variables because of its RPG elements, like character levels, stats, and equipment. Every character isn't equal. Even units with the same class can have varying strengths based on what stats they increase when they level up. Fire Emblem isn't exactly a multiplayer-oriented game either. Advance Wars is much simpler in its mechanics, yet there are so many ways these elements can interact. It makes the game difficult to master. It is also unbelievably fun. It's this quality of the game, being easy to learn but hard to master, that lends itself so well to casual multiplayer. So let's talk about it. You can connect 2 Game Boy Advance consoles in link mode. This was a time before wide use of wireless communication was used. Back then, you had to buy a peripheral that connects 2 Game Boys via a cable. If you have ever traded Pokémon on a Game Boy, then you know what it was like. Ah, here it comes, the nostalgia. I did warn you. You can then play multi-pack if both consoles have the game, and you can play versus mode or trade design maps. But there's also a single pack option if you only have 1 copy of the game. The necessary data will be sent via the cable and stored into memory, just enough to play versus mode. Single pack was incredibly handy to play multiplayer in the Game Boy Advance. I had a copy of Bomberman Tournament, and it had single pack multiplayer. I had a blast playing with my neighbors. But it is kinda cumbersome to have multiple consoles daisy-chained together just to play. Fortunately though, you don't need to do that in this game to enjoy it with your friends. You can just do this. Your turn. You can just pass the Game Boy around. Untold hours of my childhood were spent waiting for someone to end their turn. We'd split up into teams and coordinate our attacks. We'd spy on their army through fog of war by simply looking over the current player's shoulder. Some of us even cheated and got 2 turns in when no one was looking. I have a lot of fond memories with this game, and it's all because it's turn-based. This, in my humble opinion, is the greatest strength of Advance Wars. But the game itself is not without its weaknesses. Air units are quite powerful because of their mobility and firepower. Battlecopters are really versatile and cheap to produce. Naval combat, on the other hand, is unwieldy and generally underwhelming. Every naval unit has a specialized use. Cruisers are for combating submarines and air units. Submarines are for sinking battleships and landers, and battleships snipe cruisers and land units. All of them are also very expensive. When it comes to ground units, there's a huge power jump between the standard tank and the medium tank. The bigger tank is really tough and feels untouchable in comparison. And missile units are too weak. These anti-air units have the poorest mobility among all the vehicles in the game. Something you probably don't want when going up against air units. They're really only usable in the hands of Grit. And yes, I said usable, not necessarily useful. I finished the second mission with minor losses and get my first S rank. Hell yeah, my expertise is doing me good. Mission 3, yet another new commander enters the fray. This is Phoenix Wright if he were an ace pilot instead of an ace attorney. But here he's an eagle, not a phoenix. A different kind of bird, but a bird nonetheless. And they lead a new army, Green Earth. Stick around to the end and I'll mention why this nation is the best in the game. Eagle, being an ace pilot, has strong air units. But as we'll find out later, he's not the strongest at it. His weakness is naval combat. Also, this level was too easy to really show off Eagle's active power, so we'll save that for later. Quick note, you'll notice that each army has a different look for all their units. And this is a really nice aesthetic touch. The looks of each army is based on the nation of the commanding officer, and all of them are inspired by real-life designs. Orange Star units have an American military look with round helmets. Blue Moon is based on Russia, Green Earth is German with flat-top helmets, and later on, Yellow Comet is based on the Japanese. Inevitably though, the battle animations will get old, but we can disable them via the options menu during the game at any time. We finish this map by luring the enemy bomber into death, and we go in and capture the enemy HQ. And now for some plot. Eagle recognizes Andy and is hostile towards him, but Andy has no idea who he is. Whatever is going on. On to Mission 4, we are joined by another CO. Max is a roided up commander, and his passive skill is broken. All of his direct attack units do 50% more damage. And as all air units are also direct attack units, they benefit from this. In comparison, Eagle has 20% more damage and 10% more defense. And while defense sounds nice for expensive air units, we all know the saying, the best defense is devastating cannon fire. Max, therefore, is the true monster in air combat. The campaign path also branches from here, which actually means you'll play a different mission depending on who you pick. But it's actually important for unlocking commanding officers. Mission 5. The in-game characters talk about fog of war. Hey, it's not like we didn't have to go through the tutorial for that one. We are, however, up against Grit, and trying to stay out of range when you don't even know where the enemy is, yeah, it's pretty much impossible. Just look at the prime position of this missile unit at the north. If I'd sent my copters up there, they would have been shot down. Fortunately, we can save scum through these missions until we get an optimal turn. If you think this is cheating, let me tell you, I don't feel bad at all, because the AI is even more of a cheating bastard. Let me explain. In Fog of War, you can only attack what's in your vision range. The AI doesn't care though. I'm gonna play background footage at what the AI sees and what they can shoot at. See how their rockets are firing and exploding stuff they can't see. Yeah, that's not possible for human players. In fact, the only real hiding spot in Fog of War against the AI are woodlands and reefs. And there is nowhere for your air units to hide. Because of this, I lose a lot of units, which hurt my technique score. I'll have to make do in an A rank. Mission 6 introduces us to a new victory condition. It's kinda like domination. The first to capture a total of 12 properties will win. This map is split into 2 sides by a river, and each side only has 11 properties. We have to cross and capture at least one city from the other side. The city in the center is a good target. Meanwhile, enemy forces are heavily entrenched up north, and one of our cities is up there, so we have to reinforce and defend that spot. This is a battle held at 2 fronts. My mech unit gets damaged while capturing the last city, but this is where a useful technique comes in. You can join units even when they'll exceed 10 HP, and the extra doesn't go to waste. It gets converted into cash, which you can then use to produce units. This is a technique I call fast repair. I use it often to preserve my technique score. I capture the middle city within 3 turns and eventually win. Now I thought I did well here, but my speed and power score were below maximum, so improvements could definitely be made. The next mission is called History Lesson. We only get this mission if we use Max in Mission 4, and that was also the condition for unlocking Grit to use outside of campaign mode. There are a total of 11 commanding officers in Advance Wars 1, and Grit is one of the 7 unlockable COs. Barring the fog of war, it's a simple mission. Grit's tremendous range is still a nightmare, but we hide our naval forces in the reefs as we advance, feeling out any submarines and battleships along the way. There's one battleship sneakily hidden at the back of the enemy HQ that we have to take out. Then use our landers to send in tanks and infantry to their base, an easy S rank. Whenever we finish a campaign mission, we're given Advance Wars coins depending on our rank. We can use these in the in-game shop accessible from the Battle Maps option in the main menu. The shop is manned by an NPC named Hachi. He tells us some Advance Wars lore every time we visit. He sells a variety of pre-made maps we can use in Versus Mode and War Room. We also purchase any COs we unlock from here. It's not enough that we unlock them, we have to buy them as well. Unfortunately, we can't unlock every CO in one go because you have to finish the campaign to trigger the unlock. This also means you're stuck with the 4 default COs in Versus Mode until you finish the game. And although Hachi says he also gives hints on how to unlock COs, thus far I've gotten no such hint. I had to use a guide to find out how. While we're here, let's take a look at War Room. This is a challenge mode of sorts that pits you against a preset opponent in a map where you're usually at a disadvantage. Like in campaign mode, you're scored based on how well you do, but in this mode you can choose any CO you've unlocked. All maps in this mode start from a clean slate. You and your opponent have to build up an army through production bases. There are even maps where you take on 2 COs at once. Also, some of the maps are huge. War Room battles tend to last longer than campaign missions. It offers a nice alternative to test your skills and try out new strategies with specific commanders. Let's get back to the campaign. Mission 8 is called Sammy's Debut. Sammy is the last CO of the Orange Star Army. Her direct attack units are slightly weaker, but she is the queen of infantry. Not only is her infantry tougher and stronger, no other commander in the series has the ability to capture 50% faster. To give you an idea of how effective that is, delaying a 2-day capture only takes 1 HP of damage to the infantry in any other situation. Against Sammy though, you have to do 8 hit points of damage to her infantry. Her transport units also move 1 space further. She'll likely beat you to key capture points and skirmishes. This mission, however, is tough. It's a small map with fog of war in effect, and the enemy has 2 bombers and several fighters. And you have no recon units. You'll want to protect your transport copters and carefully make your way to the enemy's HQ. We also get a taste of Eagle's active power, Lightning Strike. He can move twice in 1 turn. This sounds overpowered, but fortunately the AI doesn't actively explore the woods to look for targets. So we just hide right before he activates his power. His strength is also significantly reduced when he uses it. This was a tricky map and I have no idea how I managed to get an S rank. Mission 9. We cross the ocean to arrive at a small island nation and face the inferior forces of the Yellow Comet Army. We're up against the Emperor himself. Commander Can-based inferior forces are the best all around, with 20% boost in both strength and armor. The downside is his units are also 20% more expensive to produce. But in the pre-deployed nature of campaign missions, his weakness is a non-factor. Also, our speed in these missions are important. We have to finish these next 3 missions against him quickly, else we'll miss out on secret missions to unlock a hidden CO. The deadline for the first is 8 days, a simple mission of luring the enemy into artillery fire with medium tanks, as well as, well, tanks. I finished in 7 days, and to exemplify how strict the game is, although I qualified for the unlock, I still didn't get enough for an S rank. Mission 10, Andy says can-based troops are so cool, and I have to agree. The Yellow Comet Army's units have great designs. This mission is similar to the previous. Bottleneck the enemy's superior numbers and pelt them with artillery. But this time we have to produce our own defensive line. The deadline is 10 days and we finish in 8, enough for an S rank. Can-based daughter Sonia berates him for his poor tactical choices. It seems the Emperor isn't very bright. Mission 11 is where we truly get a feel for Andy's incompetence. This is another domination map, the first of 15 properties win. The map is splintered into islands, so we'll need air units. And this is the first mission we're given an airport. Then, I'm not kidding, Andy asks, "What's an airport again?" Okay, I know this game doesn't exactly have a serious tone, but this is not cool. It makes Andy look incompetent and undeserving to be in command of anything. This line is a meme in the Advance Wars community. Andy's design, team music, and his abilities scream painfully average. But right now, I'd argue that he's just painful. Fortunately, WayForward devs are self-aware, and so this epic line is making a return in the remake. even with Canberra's superior defense rating, Max can rip his bombers apart with 20% damage to spare. The deadline is 12 turns and we finish in 9. With all 3 Yellow Comet missions finished in record time, we proceed to the secret missions where we face the brains of the Imperial Army, Sonya. She challenges all of our COs one by one, and once we pass, we unlock her for use outside of campaign mode. Sonya is a specialist in deceptive tactics and fog of war. Her unit's HP is always displayed as a question mark. This means you might waste your tank's turn by targeting a crippled enemy unit, or you'll end up attacking a weakened unit with lower firepower but they turn out to be healthy. The only way to keep tabs of her unit's HP is to turn battle animations on, and then you just make a mental note of the damage you dish out. She can also see one space further in Fog of War, but as we already know, in the hands of the computer, this is moot. Sonya's active power, Enhanced Vision, further increases her vision range and allows her to see into hiding spots from far away. When she activates her power, there is literally nowhere to hide. Fortunately, we're using Max for this first mission. Tactics be damned, we punch our way to an S rank. Mission 13, Sammy's turn to face Sonya's Wrath. It's another domination map. We're at an advantage in terms of the wind condition, but damn, another Fog of War mission! You know what? I think it's time we cheated as well with a little known glitch. You can try this out yourself if you want because it's quite easy to pull off. First we save the game while on the mission map. Next we go back to field training and play the naval battle tutorial. Our goal is to let the enemy destroy either our sea lander or our transport copter. Nell will drag you through some mandatory tutorial steps, but at least you can skip her dialogue with the start button. Battle animations can't be turned off in field training though, which slows the process down a bit. On the second turn, you should be able to deploy your transport copter to a vulnerable area, and when it's shot down, you lose and go back to the main menu. Next, go to design maps, place an orange star unit anywhere, and delete it. You'll know the glitch worked when Nell pops up and says, "Orange star's been defeated." A new turn will start and the colors are now all glitchy. The game now thinks we're playing and editing a map at the same time. The controls will be kinda funky from here, but we have to feel around the menus with an invisible cursor. We want to go back to the main menu. Load up the saved campaign and voila, we can edit the map as we see fit. I place a bunch of mech units directly on top of Sonya's base for an instant HQ takedown. To finish up, save the game again and reset. Any changes you made will be kept. I load up my game and unleash a rain of bazooka fire on Sonya's island. Easiest S rank so far. On to the last Sonya challenge, and it's the toughest thus far. It's a straightforward skirmish, but Andy's average abilities don't really help us. And Sonya is coming at us with a bomber and a battleship. I board an infantry unit onto a transport copter, and then place that into my battle cruiser. But an attack chopper swoops in and sinks it. 3 units gone in 1 ambush. This hurt my technique score, but somehow I still got an S rank. We're done with Yellow Comet and are now in Green Earth territory, where we face the second Green Earth commander, Drake. The polar opposite of Eagle, he's got tough naval units but is a bit weaker in aerial combat. His active power, Tsunami, is also very annoying, dealing 1 damage to all of our units. If you're obsessive compulsive to any degree, all the 9s you'll see on the screen will really kinda bug you. We're also given multiple paths to choose from. Quick side note, the options menu during battle has a yield option. It's an immediate surrender and you start the mission over. But Nell will also give you some tips for the mission, and she suggests we use Andy against Drake. His hyper repair is a nice counter to Drake's Tsunami, but we're not gonna use him nor Max. For the next 4 missions, we're going to use Sammy. This is to unlock one last secret mission at the end of the game, and it's also the requirement to unlock Eagle. If we use Andy, we unlock Drake instead, hence you can only unlock one of them in a single playthrough. The first is another domination map. Drake also has a passive ability that makes it rain more often, and he's unaffected by the movement penalties that come with it. Also, watch out, a battleship hidden near the enemy's base makes it difficult to get to the last city we need to win. Yeah, this was tough and I don't like this mission. Sammy says Drake's Tsunami should be against the rules and I couldn't agree more. Mission 16 is quite annoying. Approaching from the central landmass looks tempting, but there are numerous rocket units hidden near the enemy's HQ. It makes approaching via land or sea difficult. I actually had to restart this mission because I did so badly the first time, and with the power of saves coming, I reach his HQ within 6 days. That's another S rank win for me. On to mission 17. Oh Jesus, we've been fighting in Fog of War for the past 6 missions, this is ridiculous. We are up against Eagle. He has 2 bombers lying in wait near the enemy's base. I was this close to capturing their HQ, but that damn lightning strike killed my foot soldier. God damn it. Good thing I saved. Mission 18 is actually an easy mission for a change. We just have to survive for 8 days while keeping a VIP unit alive, this single infantry unit. We have to get him out of enemy territory with a transport chopper. After that, we're not safe yet. The sea is crawling with anti-air cruisers, but we have our own cruiser that can actually carry chopper units. Up to 2 in fact. Hiding our transport copter here makes sense because this map lacks any real threat to cruisers. Sweet! It is now mission 19, we are at last nearing the end, and the plot also slowly unravels. The reason Eagle hated Andy is because he was invading Green Earth. This is impossible though because 1. Andy's an idiot, and 2. Orange Star was busy defending against Blue Moon. Enter an unknown army led by a second Andy. This is a clone and equally as brain dead as the original. And the black color of their units look pretty awesome. You can tell they belong to the true villain. Sadly, there's no way for us to play as black in this game. We're outclassed in ground combat here, but Eagle's assisting us with his air units. While his fighter jets pick off the enemy bombers, we have to sneak by and get an HQ capture. Apparently though, I could have done better because I only get an A rank. For mission 20, we face an unknown foe. I use Andy because I know indirect fire will be really helpful in this mess of a map. There are woods everywhere, making it slow to navigate. Our enemy is named Storm. I'm now going to let you hear the music that plays during his turn. Marvel at the glorious sound of Storm's theme. I have no words. This team just floors me every time. It is too good. Storm is the main antagonist, the leader of the Black Hole Army. He manipulated Olaf into waging war against Orange Star. It was all a distraction so that Andy clones can wreak havoc in other nations. However, Sonya and Grit are hot on his heels. His CO profile is all mysterious. Nothing is revealed about him, even his abilities are a secret. But from experience, I know exactly what he's capable of, and this is why the map is designed as such. All of Storm's units hover past terrain, meaning his land units' move range is unhindered by the numerous trees in this map. In this game, all his units have the look of the Orange Star Army, but in the sequel, Black Hole's units have a more space-like design, and the land units actually look like they hover. He also has 20% more firepower, but at the cost of 20% less defense. As we engage him, we notice he's not building his power meter. This is because the Storm we're fighting now is an inferior clone. And now onto the mission. Pro tip, protect your transport units. It'll make capturing the lone airport to the north of the map much easier. Other than that, be prepared for a long fight. The numerous woods will definitely slow your ground approach. Use naval landers to bypass the path between the river and mountains. Unfortunately, I lost too many units to get a perfect score. I'll have to settle with rank A. And at last, mission 21. Aptly named the final battle. Sonya seems to have Storm cornered, but it's all a trap. He wanted this. He wanted his enemies to gather in a single spot so he could show off his terrifying power. Be prepared for a difficult fight. In this mission, you get to control 3 armies. Andy is mandatory and the other 2 can change depending on your actions throughout the campaign. For my playthrough, I get Grit and Eagle. The battle starts as a war of attrition. Storm is amassed in the north with a huge army and a well of resources. He will launch a blitzkrieg towards Andy's position at the center of the map. The Orange Star Army will be overwhelmed if left unaided, so we have to use the other 2 COs from the southwest and southeast to support him. At the start, Storm will send his 4 fighter jets and 4 bombers towards us, and we can shoot them down on the second turn. Oh, how foolish we are. This is the biggest trap in the game. Remember, the power meter builds up when you take damage. And also remember, Storm's passive ability means he takes more damage. He deliberately lured us into these tight valleys. He actually says this in the game. And on day 2, when his turn comes up, his power meter is full. He activates his CO power. Meteor Strike! By an unknown force, Storm pulls a giant rock from outer space and sends it crashing to the earth, kicking off Armageddon and instantly ending the game. I'm just kidding, it lands on an area that does 8 hit points of damage in a 2-cell radius. But now you see why Storm is so deadly. This defense reduction means he'll charge his CO power even faster. You'll likely be taking a meteor strike to your forces every 3 days. And this map, again, is riddled with woodland tiles. It makes separating your units difficult. And as a final touch to the difficulty, the AI is actually upgraded for this mission. Normally, the AI will try to maintain a minimum of 5-foot soldiers. If they don't have that, they'll produce no tanks. But not here. If the situation calls for a medium tank, an anti-air, or a bomber, you can bet Storm will use his vast wall of resources to produce them. Now if you've finished this game, you know that Storm can be unlocked for versus mode, but his powers are a bit different. Outside of campaign, Storm's meteor strike does only 4 damage, and all of his units exchange firepower for boosted defense instead. Essentially a reverse of his ability in campaign mode. He still has hover though, so he's still a really good pick. Oh, and he's the only CO banned in War Room. Strangely though, in this second game where Storm is infinitely more powerful, he isn't banned in any game mode. We have to survive Storm's initial assault, and then we have to capture bases to improve our unit production. We also have to regain control of Andy's area. Meteor strikes can actually be baited by deliberately grouping expensive units together, so use Green Earth's pre-deployed units for this very purpose. Right around turn 9 is when I start gaining ground. Slowly and surely, keep pushing towards Storm's base, and on day 18, his last unit falls. Storm is defeated, but he promises one day he'll return. A brief dialogue between all the characters play, and now the war is over. But our campaign playthrough is not. Eagle challenges Andy to one more battle, a clash between men, the resulting body count be damned. This is a skirmish between rivals. On the ranking screen though, my power score is in the pits. This is because only the leading army's skills count towards their score, and seeing as Andy was busy staying alive, scoring higher would have been really tough. This is my first and only B rank for this playthrough. The bonus mission is unlike all other campaign missions. The map starts out relatively empty like in War Room mode, but Eagle starts at a significant positional and resource generation advantage, so this is still an uphill battle. But once I finish, I get my final S rank and the story ends. Cue the credits roll. From here, we can buy any COs we unlock from the shop, but we can also buy Advanced Campaign for 1 coin. This is a hard mode for the regular campaign, but the difficulty jump is way too much. And I am not kidding, this mode is brutal. And I won't play it for you here because I just bought this controller and I don't want to break it. But here's a sneak peek as to how lopsided the games become. Just look at how big the enemy's forces are compared to yours in the first mission. Hard campaign is so hard, the devs decided for your score you only need to finish quickly. Power and technique are freebies. Plus you get double Advance Wars coins. Regardless, my speed score is pathetic and I only get a B rank. But as a teenager, I did manage to get to the final mission in the hard campaign, and I can make a few honorable mentions from memory, namely the 3rd mission against Yellow Comet, Cam Base Error. It is notorious for how specific you have to be to even stand a chance of winning. And the final mission was just too much. I could weather Storm's initial strike, but I always lose Andy's position in the process. I never finished it, and likely never will. Unless... if you do manage to finish the hard campaign, your final reward is the last unlock. The commanding officer you were with during field training. Yep, you unlock Nell. Her ability is she randomly does more damage, so she's a luck-based pick. It's an underwhelming reward, it's more for bragging rights than anything else. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Advance Wars, the turn-based tactics game that I carried with me throughout my high school days. There's a good reason why this game is listed as one of the best games for the Game Boy Advance. It feels like a match made in heaven, really. I hope the remake comes out sooner rather than later. It'll give me hope for a new Wars game. As the series went on, it tried to add more to the formula, but by the 3rd game it was becoming quite bloated. In my opinion, the basic formula is solid enough. I'd be happy even if we just get more of the same. It's been 14 years, man. I'm not interested in Fire Emblem. It's really high time we get a new Wars game. This series, the fans, the world deserves it. Now that you've made it to the end, as promised, I'll tell you why Green Earth is the best army in Advance Wars. They're the only army that taught to camouflage their troops. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, show some support and all that. I hope you'll have a lovely day. See you next video.